In May of 2021, a historical marker was erected near the intersection of Ponce de Leon Avenue and Oakdale Road. It tells the story of the life and tragic death of Porter Flenoy Turner. He was a husband and father of 2 sons. A diligent provider, Turner worked 60 hours a week as a mechanic and porter at a car dealership and garage. He made extra money by driving a cab at night. On the evening of August 20th, 1945, 50-year-old Turner was stabbed on the lawn of a home on Springdale Road. It would be June of 1946 before it was revealed that members of the Ku Klux Klan bragged about Turner's killing. No arrests were ever made in the lynching.
Benjamin E. Mays High School was established in 1981, replacing Southwest High School. It is the first Atlanta public school named for a living African-American man. Dr. Benjamin Elijah Mays was a renowned minister, educator, and civil rights activist. Considered the spiritual mentor to civil rights giant Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Dr. Mays served as president of Morehouse College from 1940 to 1967. Known as an Academy of Math and Science, Benjamin Elijah Mays High School Educational would be recognized as a National School of Excellence in 1987, just 6 years after opening its doors. I'm a proud graduate of Benjamin Elijah Mays High School. As for other famed alumni, former Atlanta City Council member Caesar Mitchell, renowned artist Radcliffe Bailey, Grammy Award-winning rapper, singer, and producer CeeLo Green, and none other than Andre Dickens, the 61st mayor of the city of Atlanta.
Today is Rosa Parks' Day. It's the anniversary of her birthday, and her action was about making sure that transit was available for everybody. It was about desegregating buses so that everybody could ride. And so I think that it's a great reminder as Transit Equity Day that transit is really about access. It's about making sure that people can get to jobs, can get to work, can get to school. And so her legacy is one that's not only about desegregation, but it's also about economic access. There's this incredible 1950s bus behind me, similar to the one that Rosa Parks sat down and wouldn't move on. She was an inspiration that individual people can make a difference, that individual people as part of a whole can really change America. Public transit is really the backbone of making sure that our economy can grow. Whether it's bus or it's rail, it's really the way that we are able to move our lives. And so I think the vision for equity in transit is making sure transit's everywhere, making sure it's affordable, making sure that it goes to the places that we need it to go.
Auburn Avenue was considered one of Atlanta's most famous streets, replete with successful Black-owned businesses, beautiful houses of worship, and an unparalleled nightlife. Sweet Auburn Historic District generated significant wealth prior to the Civil Rights Movement. A bustling thoroughfare, it was home to Atlanta Life Insurance Company and the nation's first successful Black newspaper, the Atlanta Daily World. Renowned artists like Miles Davis and Gladys Knight graced the stage of the Royal Peacock. Sunday mornings meant Big Bethel AME Church and the historic Ebenezer Baptist Church, where both Dr. Martin Luther King Sr. and Jr. delivered powerful sermons. Civil rights activist and businessman John Wesley Dobbs coined the area Sweet Auburn. Dubbed its unofficial mayor, he was the grandfather of Atlanta's first Black mayor, Maynard Jackson. Sweet Auburn Historic District received a National Historic Landmark designation in 1976.
is Transit Equity Day. It's a day that's recognized across the country to recognize how important public transportation is to the lives of people in our communities, and that it's important to also support the people in our communities who rely on public transportation to get around. Today is also Rosa Parks' birthday, so this is a very important Transit Equity Day because of the inequities that were experienced on the public transportation systems in Montgomery, Alabama. It's a rainy day today. A lot of people who are trying to get to work are having to stand out in the rain waiting for a bus that might come 10 or 15 minutes later, may come a little early and might disrupt their whole day. We need to make sure that people can get around safely. Having relied on public transportation myself for several years, having given up my car and commuting all the way up to Forsyth County from right here in Mechanicsville, I've seen the daily realities of so many of my neighbors, of my constituents, and I want to make sure that I could take that history, that legacy, as an inspiration to make sure we get better policy for everyone across the city of Atlanta.
We're here because once again Atlanta is making history. We have opened up Unity Place, the first in the nation, one-of-a-kind housing for police recruits. So that's why we are here now. We are giving our recruits some place to stay, actually in one of our most vibrant communities. As we talk about community policing, we must give the officer a chance and opportunity to get to know the community. Once you're on call, once you're working, you really don't have that opportunity. But here now, at the beginning of their training, they have an opportunity to actually live amongst the neighbors, to actually live amongst the people that they will actually be protecting. So this is why it is very important. They're very excited about having the police officers in their neighborhood. First and foremost, it gives them a sense of security. And then once again, it also gives the neighborhood an opportunity to get to know the officer, because it goes both ways. The neighborhood has to know the officer as well as the officer knowing the neighborhoods. This is a catalyst. With everything, even with America being pioneers, we have shown and proven that this can work and will work. So now you give other people the possibility to actually go off and do something different. Don't stop with the police. Don't stop with the police. We have firemen, we have teachers, we have public safety workers, public workers. So let's start this and let this be the catalyst for us moving forward, doing other great things throughout the city such as this.
This is a great opportunity for the city of Atlanta. The stakes are very high. And today, for me, means the opportunity to immediately get to work on those things that are important to all of us. I am particularly excited about the fact that we have some existing members who previously served. Although I'm not new to the legislative process, I am new to City of Atlanta government. And so certainly I will be leaning on existing members for mentorship and guidance.
I'm just thankful that the people of Atlanta have given me an opportunity to do work on behalf of the city. I'm looking forward to working with my new colleagues. Some of them have been friends of mine for a long time. Some of them are people who I've just met in the last few weeks, and I look forward to doing wonderful things on behalf of the city of Atlanta. I'm been an advocate and an organizer fighting for communities on one side of this kind of conversation, but I recognize that there are a lot of systems, a lot of processes, a lot of just knowledge that I have not been privy to, that I look forward to being able to learn about the histories, the ideas, just the stories that really have made the city what it is. And I look forward to learning from people who've been here for years or for decades in some cases. And I think it's important to help bridge the gap between the old and the new, the past and the future. We have to have positive relationships and even potentially friendships to move our city forward.
I am very much looking forward to working with the experienced members on council. I've also reached out to several predecessors of mine in the role of Atlanta City Council President for advice as well, and so I'm looking forward to learning. I think this job is very much about learning about the city, learning about what residents need and what they want, and the ways in which we can help. And so I'm very excited to learn from all facets of council and the city in order to try to do a great job in this role. I think today really marks a crossroads for Atlanta and a chance to collaborate on really big things. The mayor-elect, the council, we have a lot of things to do, but I think the spirit in which we come at today is one of working together, of building bridges. I think that's what folks are looking for, and I'm excited to work in that way going forward.
Everyone, this is Councilmember Amir Faroqi, Chair of the City Council Transportation Committee, welcoming you to the Wednesday, February 16th, 2022 meeting of the Atlanta City Council Transportation Committee. Hope everyone's week is going well. We have a pretty good agenda today. It includes a report from the city's Department of Transportation and a number of legislative items. But before we get to those respective buckets, we'll run through some housekeeping items, including our 2022 goals and objectives and public comment as well. So I will call the meeting to order and ask Mr. Johnson to please call the roll so we see who is here today and make sure we have a quorum. Mr. Johnson, are you with us?
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Councilmember Amir Faroqi?
Here.
Councilmember Jason Dozier? Here. Councilmember Antonio Lewis. Here. Councilmember Marcy Collier Overstreet.
Present.
Councilmember Keisha Shawn Waits.
Present.
Councilmember Alex Wan.
Present.
Councilmember Matt Westmoreland.
Here.
Quorum present, Mr. Chair.
Excellent. Full house. Good to be with everyone today. I know we'll be in person hopefully soon, but until then, it's good to be with y'all. Our next item is a remote meeting statement. Mr. Johnson, could you please read that in?
This Transportation Committee is being conducted remotely as advertised and is in accordance with Georgia Code Section 50-14-1. The meeting will be conducted in conformance with Robert's Rules of Order and the Rules of Council as authorized by the City Code. The public may access the meeting by dialing 404-902-5066, conference ID 151945, which was noted on the February 11, 2022 Council's homepage at citycouncil.atlantaga.gov, the Council's YouTube channel, or the Council's Facebook and Twitter pages via @ATL Council. All presentations are available on the Atlanta City Council Transportation Committee presentation page. The agenda was published and made available on February 11, 2022 via atlantacitygA.iqm2.com. In addition, the public was able to submit comments via voicemail at 404-330-6059 between the hours of 4 and 7 p.m. the day before this meeting. All persons present on the remote council meeting conference bridge are requested to mute your phones and speakers. Additionally, speakers must be acknowledged by the presiding officer prior to speaking. Each council member is requested to open your Outlook email and minimize the screen. Amendments, substitutes, and informational documents have been distributed to committee members beforehand. Thank you all in advance for your cooperation. The next item on our agenda is the adoption of the agenda.
Oh, sorry, I'm over here talking to myself. Yeah, I will move to approve as presented to the committee and the public. Can I get a second?
Antonio Lewis, second.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Faruqi motion, second by Lewis. Please open the vote.
One moment, the vote is open. Will everyone please vote?
Wait, it's aye.
Westmoreland in favor. The vote is closed. 7 yeas, 0 nays. The agenda has been adopted.
Thank you. Our next item is item number E, approval of the minutes. I'll move to approve. Can I get a second?
Juan,
Antonio, second. And second by Juan. Please open the vote.
One moment. The vote is open.
Wait, it's aye.
Westmoreland in favor.
Lewis in favor.
The vote is closed. 7 yeas, 0 nays. The minutes have been approved.
Terrific. Our next item is approval of the 2022 Transportation Committee goals and objectives. It was sent around earlier and incorporates many of your comments and suggestions. I will move to approve. Could I get a second?
Overstreet, second.
Thank you, Ms. Overstreet. Was someone else wanting to speak there? Was that Mr. Lewis?
I believe it's Councilmember Alex Wan, Chair.
Mr. Wan, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, I have a couple of just revisions I'd like to make to this. I had sent some comments in that are kind of captured in part, but I did want to be a little more explicit about them. So, Mr. Chair, is it appropriate for me to offer two amendments to this as they're on the floor right now?
Yeah, procedurally, we have a motion and a second. I'm happy to withdraw the motion. I don't know if that does it for us, but please suggest your amendments.
Well, so I think if playing the fun, Robert's rule, I think if I put forward a motion to amend, it actually has hierarchy over that. Actually, I don't know. That's a good question. But if you're withdrawing it, I'll go ahead and put forward a motion to amend. On page 2, under community engagement, I'd like to add a bullet point that is facilitate accountability and transparency with previous bond and funding referenda, including More MARTA, Renew Atlanta, and TSWAST.
Okay, noted.
And then on page 3, under transit, I'd like to explicitly call out on bullet 3, explore and support transit/rail solutions along the Beltline. And then on the next bullet, I add light and heavy rail offerings.
Yep, I mean, I take issue with some of those, but I'm happy to include them. Is that it?
Yeah, that's all. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So that's my motion to amend.
Terrific. I will second your motion. Any discussion on the motion to amend?
Yes, please. I have your hand raised.
I'm sorry, is that Ms. Overstreet or Ms. Waits? Sorry.
Yes, but so does Councilmember Lewis. He has his hand raised as well.
Yep. So let's start with Mr. Lewis, please. Yep.
No, I'll let Ms. Waits go first.
No, it's Ms. Overstreet who's in line.
I definitely want to remove my second and accommodate Juan's request and amendment. So that's it for now. Just remove it.
We'd remove that motion and that second prior to Mr. Juan introducing his proposed amendment. We'll turn to Mr. Lewis, and then Santana's on the line as well. Mr. Lewis.
I want to make I want to add one thing, which we add a legislative ethic to transportation committee. I think we need one dedicated person dedicated to this committee. There's a lot of funding that's coming through this committee. There are a lot of things I think we're missing out on because we don't have one person dedicated directly to this. And I've talked to the folks over in that are legislative aides, and I think there's just too much on their plate. We need to expand them. So I think they need a legislative aide directly dedicated to this committee.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. I got received word from the council office. We're not amending, we're just adding to this, so there's no need for a motion to amend, Mr. Juan. We can just add it as we talk through it here. To Mr. Lewis's point, I'm happy to, more than welcome to include it. I have no objection to it. I do think that's probably an issue also that needs to be raised in an FEC from a staffing perspective, but I have no objection to including Mr. Lewis's suggestion or Mr. Juan's suggestion. Are there any objections to the additions that have been proposed? Great. So if we could incorporate, Mr. Johnson, the suggestions and the additions by Mr. Lewis and Mr. Juan, that'd be great. We can obviously follow up for specific words after the fact if necessary, but I think both their suggestions have met no objections from the committee, and we'll include them in the goals for the year. And barring no others, I will move to approve the goals as presented and added from Mr. Juan and Mr. Lewis.
Juan, second.
Thank you, Mr. Juan. Please open the vote.
One moment. The vote is open.
Waits is aye.
As is Westmoreland. The vote is closed. 7 yeas, 0 nays. The 2022 Transportation Committee goals and objectives have been adopted.
Thank you all for your input and time in helping craft those for the year. We'll revisit them as appropriate just so we can keep ourselves accountable and on track. And we'll make sure those are posted for the public as well. Our next item is item number G, public comments. I believe we have between 17 and 18 minutes today. If you could please play them for us and the public today.
One moment.
Hi, my name is Brian, and I reside in Capitol Hill. I want to thank Council members Overstreet, the team for conducting the town hall about Campbellton Road 2 weeks ago. I can't wait for additional town halls. I'm so excited about other options that the city council can pursue in order to achieve our light rail mission along Campbellton Road and other corridors. We do know research is almost complete as far as what other options we have, and as far as giving the promise, delivering the promise of light rail. And if we can, just stick with our promise, hold Martin accountable, and also the option is the city council could go at it alone. It's like how we did the streetcar project. I'm more than able to assist with research. I do have some research completed already. My telephone number is 404-718-0799. Thank you so much. Good luck. Bye-bye.
I am Brother Anthony Muhammad, a soulful spiritual being having a human experience. I call on the Transportation Committee and ask you members and the chairman to hear my words, Rick Dixon and your administration. 2017, Butler Road was promised to be micro service by Ms. Madoja, who was the Commissioner of Public Works, Commissioner Transportation, along with other members of the administration, Mr. Martin and Ms. Katrina Parks, who represented the work of Mr. Reed. And yeah, it's not paid. South Fulton is a new city. Less than 5 years, 2 years ago, I spoke to them about Button Road being paved all the way across Camp Creek Parkway. And that has been done just 2 years ago. And they have finished this January and paving it up to County Line Road and Button Road going south east towards Campbellton Road. I ask you, what is transparency? I ask you, why is it that the Constitution of the United States specifies that we, the indigenous people to North America, are to be treated according to the Constitution Amendment 14 as all Caucasians are being treated? And we ask, why is it that we had to support Afghanistanians, bring hundreds of thousands over here, now they move up to the top of the economic position than the darker people here in North America? Why is it that we get ready to say war with the peoples in Ukraine, and then you won't have another thousands and thousands come over and move up to the front row? We have a lot of puppets. Why isn't the lot of puppets studying the law beneficial that can be utilized to substantiate what I'm saying? Bring in resources, bring in support from other government agencies to aid in the work of our streets, to aid in the work to help change the condition of the darker people living on the street. Why is it that we have to vote every term and don't get nothing? Get you same people representing the house mentality of a slave of 2021. We don't need that. Our people deserve more than that. I ask you, Caucasians, our friends in the state of Georgia, help us influence our people to do right in the capital city for the darker people. It starts with karma. Karma is your justification for what the wrong your family have done to us. I am.
Good morning, Transportation Committee. For the second time in 1 week, a vehicle has crashed into the concrete barricades at Bill Kennedy Way Southeast at I-20 East ramps. This bridge carries the Atlanta Beltline crossing over I-20, a crucial connection between Southeast Atlanta and Northeast Atlanta. For the second time in 1 week, a speeding vehicle with so much force it knocked several concrete barricades 4 feet out of place. The speeding on the I-20 exit ramp needs to be addressed by GDOT before a vulnerable road user is seriously injured while using the Atlanta Beltline. In 2020, Atlanta had 86 traffic fatalities, a trend that has been continually rising for 4 years. Pedestrians have accounted for 1/3 of fatalities for the past 20 years. Most recently, a pedestrian dying while crossing Campbellton Road Monday, a higher injury network street. Traffic violence is affecting all Atlanteans. Thank you.
Yes, this is Chris Ferguson. I live in District 1. I'm calling to say that road safety and pedestrian safety and bicycle safety is important to me. I know the feds have a lot of control over our roads and ramps and all that, but there's got to be stuff that can be done. It can be done quickly through the City Council, through the Atlanta DOT. All y'all council people have budgets, right? You can spend money on stuff. We've seen participatory budgeting processes. So do things that prioritize pedestrian and bicycle safety in and around, particularly we've seen lately in and around high traffic areas coming off the highway. There's just got to be better ways than just putting up barriers and waiting for people to hit them, right? There's got to be something that can be done, whether it's paint colors or reflective strips or, ripple strips or speed bump, whatever it can be done, the city controls should be done. It should be done really quickly in these areas. We have the data. Y'all have so much data on car accidents and bicycle accidents and pedestrians hit. All the data is there to respond and to respond quickly. And I know y'all put in a lot of, four-way stops and traffic controlled intersections on it. That's a great first step. But obviously, there's more that needs to be done. All right, so I appreciate y'all. Have a good one.
Hello, this is Mark Chmielewski, a resident of Reynoldstown in Atlanta. My message is relating to the City of Atlanta Transportation Committee. I'm just calling to express my opinion that more needs to be done in Reynoldstown, and in particular along Bill Kennedy Way, near the intersection of Memorial along the Madison Yards development. This area is rapidly growing. There is tremendous pedestrian traffic that continues to grow as new housing units come on the market. In general, it feels like the infrastructure has not kept up with the growth. And in particular, the area along the Beltline maybe needs some infrastructure enhancements. I would also note traffic exiting I-20 typically backs up for folks trying to enter the Chick-fil-A parking lot. There's really just quite a bit of work that I think needs to be done to better understand this area and better understand the future needs of the community, because at the moment it seems very poorly thought through and inefficient relative to the broader uses of Bill Kennedy Way and the neighborhood. So I would encourage the city and the Transportation Committee to really spend the time and the resources to better look at these issues, partner with Liliana, our city council representative, as well as the Beltline, to really ensure that this area gets the attention and the investment it needs. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Hello, my name is David Eder. I'm a resident of the City of Atlanta, and I'm calling just to urge the Transportation Committee to make safety their top priority. We've seen 2 decades of increases in deaths on our roads and probably increases in injuries. And 2021 was one of the highest rates of roadway deaths on record, and really urge the Transportation Committee to make safety their top priority, use the Safe Systems approach, and I really look forward to all of the great work that will be done in the coming year. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hey there, this is Alec Seabohm, District 1 constituent. I would just like to implore the committee to prioritize pedestrian and cyclist improvements on our roadways here in Atlanta versus vehicle throughput and speeds. There's been an alarming trend of accidents and near fatalities on our roadways, especially near our most well-known pedestrian and cyclist corridors. Nice for that the committee council starts thinking about ways and prioritizing capital to go to improving these roadways for pedestrian and cyclist safety. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon to the council. I just want to address now. I know you know my name, Ms. March. There's so much of confusion about the bus line to the streetcar. I remember I did go to Fort Mac. I did see Marta. I did talk to them. And the question that I did ask them, that number one, what was the best between the bus or the streetcar? Number one, they say it's going to take 15 years. And now the other one say the bus will be 3 or 4 years. So I threw the question. I said, now, electric cars, what effect did it happen in the community? Since it's totally electric, we get the streetcar, it's going to cause these people light bill go up. Then number two, we have a lot of high risk on camera. Older people got cancer. Since we know we got Georgia Powell, did we do any research on that also? And number three, which would I would take? I'd rather have the bus because we're going to dig up the remanage. We're going to displace people. We really need MARTA because the people still confused. Some people think it, like this lady in Sandtown, she's thinking the streetcar is going to go through her neighborhood. So we need MARTA to be there. And I think, again, have MARTA there because the people is really confused. Have a blessed day. Have another town hall meeting with MARTA. And we could hear this from MARTA, not from city council, and everybody will be on the same page. Because 15 years later, we don't know where we're going to be at. And we need to concentrate on Cascade. These roads are so messed up. So what happened to Overstreet? I don't know you on this committee now. What happened to the money with the street? With Cascade? We gotta wait till somebody get killed? When are you gonna pay the street?
Greetings, committee members and staff. A special greetings to you citizens and voters of Atlanta, monitoring your government in action. Ben Howard, being advocate, public policy analyst. It's time, I hope you agree, that there be a public hearing about the transportation plans for the Campbellton Road corridor. We've had town halls, we've had talk on radio, we've had emails, and now we need to have a public hearing so that all of the public can hear all sides. And this time, let there be documentation. Let there be the last two intergovernmental agreements between MARTA and the city of Atlanta. Let there be documentation about NPUR and NPUP policies. Let there be documentation about organization charts, approval charts, and timelines. Let there be documentation about mission statements and policies and procedures. And let there be documentation about the bridges along Campbellton Road. And let there be documentation about the soil studies. And let there be documentation about the electric cost for light rail and the gasoline cost for buses. There be some documentation this time, and let there be a public hearing. Please. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Neil Davis, and I am a resident of Reynoldstown. I live near the intersection of Bill Kennedy and Memorial, and I just wanted to call to express some concern, and it's more than just concern. Like, I'm actually really bothered by some of the recent traffic conditions that we faced that we continue to deal with that seem to go unattended. I have 4 instances since January 8th that I care to bring your attention to
where vehicles have literally plowed through the traffic attenuators to the point where it squeezes the belt line, and that's concerning to me because it speaks to an extreme high rate of speed as you exit this ramp going up. And there are never any skid marks or anything. You know, people are just hitting this, and they're leaving all kinds of debris is being left. And it's not that I expect police officers to be everywhere at every moment of the day, but it really begs the question, you know, what types of, you know, fines are these people experiencing when they end up doing this much damage? There's a house that has been run into numerous times here, but again, on January 8th and January 8th and February 14th, we've experienced two instances where those attenuators have been knocked out of place and not put back in place, and lots of debris has been left. On January 15th, there was a crossing signal that had been knocked down right at the intersection of Memorial and Bill Kennedy, and people were literally unable to cross the street. You know, you can't press the button to cross. And when it was put back up for a couple of days, it didn't even have a button to allow you to cross. So again, there's another dangerous condition. And then lastly, on January 28th, I saw a Brinks truck parked on the belt line right at that same intersection, Bill Kennedy and Memorial. And it's just really interesting, you know. And sadly enough, you know, not anything was done. I even have a video of a police cruiser going by and not even like looking over there. And the Brinks truck actually drove down the belt line and pulled back into Bill Kennedy. And this is supposed to be a dedicated walkway. You know, there's no question about whether or not Madison Yard owns this area. And it's just really, really concerning. It seems like the work culture in terms of APD and the city is very lax, and it is leaving a lot of. I have a child, and we navigate these byways regularly, and this is just unsettling. I hope that you all choose to do something. Thanks for your time. Bye-bye.
So that concludes our public comments today. I want to thank members of the public who called in yesterday to have their remarks played today. I heard two things. One is obviously the concern over broader street safety. It's something that the council recognized in 2020 by passing the Vision Zero goals, which we still remain a long way from, and that speaks in many ways to how our built environment and roads have been designed. And I can assure the public, not to speak for the committee, because I know everyone on the committee has their own voice, but the safety of our streets and sidewalks for bikes and pedestrians and drivers is top of mind. It's integrated into our goals for the year, and it's I think front and center for a lot of the conversations we have with the Department of Transportation. I'll just say, as a point of personal privilege, over the first 4 years I've served on council, the most popular things I've done in my district have been legislating always stops, and that just goes to show you how hungry people are for safer streets and for safer walking and biking environments. And I also heard a few comments about Councilmember Overstreet's and Lewis's and Waite's public forum 2 weeks ago, town hall 2 weeks ago, about the Hamilton Road corridor and the more MARTA plans for that corridor. MARTA will be before our committee in March. I asked them if they wanted to come earlier to talk about the Hamilton Road corridor. They said they'll present in March when they're scheduled to do so. And we'll keep an eye on it collectively. If we need to have a formal public hearing on it, we will do so. But I know council members who represent the area have been talking with MARTA and working with MARTA, and those conversations will continue, but they'll be before us in March for a report, and we can also press them on it as well. But that tees up perfectly our first presentation of the year. We have a handful of agency and department presentations that will be made to us on kind of a quarterly basis. The first is ATL DOT. I've structured it so that we have one presentation per meeting, but I've asked each of the presenting bodies to limit their formal presentation to 15 minutes so we can get more quickly to Q&A when I think the most fruitful discussion tends to happen. And so with that, I'll move to item H, the report from the Atlanta Department of Transportation, and turn it over to, I believe, Doug Nagy and maybe Katina Alexander are with us today.
Mr. Chairman. This is Josh Rowan, Commissioner. I'm actually going to do the presentation today, and they'll do the legislative items. So you're stuck with the junior varsity team.
Yeah. Well, welcome, Commissioner. The floor is yours.
All right, excellent. And so don't be distracted by the 94 slides that you see in the PowerPoint presentation. I don't know that I could read the page numbers in 15 minutes. We have a lot of project details that we included because we wanted to make sure that we were answering the bell with Councilmember Wan's resolution, as well as we were scheduled for a quarterly update anyways. And so I want to take a minute and touch on some of the comments that were made, because we agree wholeheartedly. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal that came out talking about how speeds are on the increase and pedestrian fatalities are on the increase during the pandemic. And anecdotally, we've seen that with the reduced volumes on the roadways. People are compensating by accelerating, and we have seen an increase in vehicular homicide as well as the severity of crashes, and that's very problematic. And so we'd like to work with this group to, in many ways, recommit ourselves to the Vision Zero and putting safety first. And I think that's going to lead to some challenging decisions that we have to make as we look at investments. To the couple comments about Bill Kennedy Way, I actually met with GDOT yesterday. They're going to be looking at some advanced warning systems similar to what was installed at Northside Drive off of I-75. It's kind of a mini collector distributor that ties straight into Bill Kennedy, and there's not a lot of warning that you're coming to a signal. And it looks like a lot of people are having issues with speed as they attempt to make the turn. And so we're going to work with GDOT to do the simple things first, and we have some strategies for maybe things that are more dramatic. So let's remember this day where we talked about safety being the priority, because quite often convenience ends up being at the opposition of safety. And so I want to jump into the presentation today. We have a battery of reports that we put together and we publish on our website and we share, and we've put these sort of in order of my favorites. And so if we jump to slide number 2, you're going to see the Renew Atlanta T-Splosh project list by category. And there is a lot on this report. And so we've grouped the projects, complete street, bridges, so you can see each project that's in the specific category. You can see which phase it's in. So we look at things from really planning, design, construction, and complete. Just very, very basic approach. All of this ties back actually to a master P6 schedule that we didn't share because other than maybe some of us that are construction management nerds don't know how interested you are in seeing a P6 schedule. I think we have a screenshot towards the end, but all of this is being pulled from our master schedule that we update monthly. For the purposes of transparency, you see we have the original project budgets, and then we track the changes to show you the up-to-date project budget. I would share that this report generally runs the way that the financial information closes. We run with about a 30-day lag. And so this would be based on the end of December information. But you can track the original budget, you can track the changes, we can drill down and show you why we had the changes that were made. And the shaded box, one of the things we have to be very careful about is that we can't commingle T-Splosh and bond funding. So you can see where the funding source is for the project. One thing I would note is that our projects are predominantly about 90% locally funded. Where we have the dual funded projects, those monies actually are tied to specific scopes of work. And so the analogy that we give people is like a sandwich. The T-Splosh may pay for the bread, and the bond may pay for the tomatoes and the mayonnaise. So again, we can drill down much deeper into that information. As we work left to right, you can also see it's important, we think, to look at what's encumbered. And so we count the funding really in 3 categories. Has it been committed? Has it been encumbered? And has it been paid? That's especially important on the T-SPLOS, because as we've said in the past, T-SPLOS is much like running a small business. We're collecting the revenue on a monthly basis. So essentially we let the account build up, and then we move it into the project that corresponds with our cash flow. So in addition to our P6 schedule, we have a cash flow which is really predicting not only the amount, but when we're going to receive the funding. So we have to marry those two up. And then when we have the funding for specific projects, we will commit it. And committed just means, okay, we're moving this money to this project to be used. The more important category is looking at encumbrance, which shows that we're under contract. We're under contract for design, where we're paying for right-of-way, we're relocating utilities, things like that. And then a real quick measure of progress is to look at the paid today column. And so you can see when there's a bit of a gap between encumbrance and paid to date, we're probably starting a new phase. If there's not a big gap, we're either finished or we're wrapping a phase up. And then here at the end, this is a mini schedule. And this is what I like. And I use this quite a bit. And so you can see we've just anticipated when the project's going to start. And that's a commencement date. That's money's committed, we're moving forward. We've really worked hard over the last 3 years to press our designers to really manage to a schedule. And so we took the extra step to say, well, we're gonna publish an anticipated design finish date. And we know that things change, but we want to have targets. And so we anticipate when the design is going to finish, when construction is going to start, and when construction is going to finish. And we had some pretty robust debate within the team about the level of specificity. There are some owners who will specify what year this is going to happen. There are other owners who will specify what quarter. There are other owners who will specify the month, the date, and the year. We opted to look at the month and the year. We think that's a pretty specific target. And for any of my friends out there who are playing golf, we know that small targets lead to small misses. And so we wanted to be a little more specific in those goals. And so you can really spend a lot of time in this report. And this is actually one that I keep on my phone and pull up with regularity. At a moment's notice, if someone is to say, well, what's the status of fill in the blank project, you can go to this report and see pretty quickly what phase it's in, what the budget is, where the money's coming from to fund it, what have we encumbered, what have we spent, and the anticipation dates for design and construction. And this gets updated on a monthly basis. And so as we call it, the horizontal update meeting, it can run anywhere from 2 to 4 hours depending on what's going on. But our goal, going back to the just do what you say you're going to do, was first to push good data out and then hold ourselves accountable. And so I won't drill down into the project details, and I'll show you why in a second. But this covers everything within the program. So let's jump to let's jump to Atlanta T-SPLOS quarterly report, which is another one of my favorite reports here. We send this one out monthly to our colleagues on council. Slide number 6. Sorry, I'm messing with the Zoom on my screen so I can see everything here. The best snapshot that comes from this report, and this was a lot of credit goes to our consultant who helped us work with Power BI to mine the data that we already have to start pulling these numbers together. And so if you look at the boxes across the top, you can see the program budget of $573.3 million. We're showing that it's balanced because we believe that there will be sufficient T-SPLOS funds. You can see there we've committed $424 million, so there's more work coming. We've paid $349 against a plan value of $439. And so what that's telling you is that at this point in time, we had planned to spend about $440 million, and we've spent $350. So if you take those, divide the paid divided by the plan value, that gets the 0.8, which is in the box next to that, the XPI. And we like the XPI because it's really accounting for elements of time and elements of cost. Our goal is actually a 0.9. So a 0.8 isn't entirely bad. I will fall on the sword for the 0.8 because having to bid Cascade twice and design the Cab Avenue about 3 times to get something that was a little more satisfactory to the community, that pulled us back a little bit because the construction didn't start in accordance with our cash flow. But as those projects start, I suspect by midsummer we're going to be back up to about a 0.85. End of the year, it'll be in the high 0.8s, but it doesn't move quickly, but it's a good reflection of where we are. And then in total, the program's 61% complete. And there's a diagram below. I like this circular chart. It just shows what phase they're all in. And so you can see this big blue wedge. We want it to get bigger month by month by month. This is one, again, we send on a monthly basis. It's a good snapshot of the program, where we stand, and how things are going for us. If we jump down to the next slide number 7, I had mentioned the cash flow. And I want you to just kind of ignore the XPIs on this report because it's based on the month of December. And winter is always a bit volatile for us with weather. But the most important thing is to start looking at really the yellow line, which is actual funding. It's kind of a greenish yellow. This bottom chart, the cumulative cash flow. And then you can see our planned commitments, which is the dashed blue line, and then the paid to date, which is this black line. So really, we don't ever want to see this yellow line invert with the blue, yellow line invert with the black. Again, we're monitoring how this money is coming in. And our last collection month will be April of this year. And so by the end of April, early May, we will know the exact amount of T-SPLOS we've collected. And so typically these programs, you're collecting for 5 years, and the construction can go on for several years after the revenue has been collected. But the challenge is you never want to spend more than you're earning. And so you can see we've done a good job allowing ourselves some room to operate. Even with the pandemic in 2020, we had a dreadful spring of 2020, but we've recovered from that, and I'll show you that here in just a second. If you look at the next slide, which is slide number 8, the collection summary, I think, is an important one to look at. The collections to date, we had been projecting about $250 million. We've recovered well from the pandemic, and we've upped that projection to right about $280 million. And so that's been good because we've been able to move contingencies into projects and really show that the funds are there to complete this program. If you look immediately to the right, the cumulative T-SPLOS revenue, when you put it on the scale of the whole program, that 45-degree sloping line is actually quite good. We normalize that by looking at it by quarter, so that the few months in the spring of 20, you don't really see the big dip. You don't see a big flattening of that curve, which it shows that our revenue collection has been really fairly consistent throughout the life of the program. And I think that's going to be helpful should T-SPLOS 2 pass and be approved, that we'll have much more confidence in our revenue projections because we now have historical data to fall upon. The bottom shows just bar charts. I actually like the line chart because you can start seeing the trends, and for this thing to be relatively smooth at 45 degrees really tells a positive story. We didn't include every single report, but if you go to slide 9, this is one that we're trying to put a little extra emphasis into. This is actually the discretionary monies that the council members have, and so you can see that we have some decent balances at the council district level, and our goal was to have all that money spent before now. We were not quite there, but we'll be following back up, trying to identify needed projects and safety improvements, and some have more than others, but we certainly want to put those discretionary dollars to their best use. And you can see we're still only 40% complete when it comes to those discretionary monies. So more discussions to come on that, but we actually have reports that break down all of the projects by council district that have either, same as the format above, that have been committed, encumbered, or completed. And so this is an area that we would really like to start drawing down upon that fairly quickly. And the last thing I want to share, and I think I'm running up on my time, is that all of this ties back to a budget book. And so I want to go to slide 10, and this is where actually you can track changes at the project level. So we'll break our projects down by the engineering, the professional engineering, by right-of-way, by utilities, and by construction. And you can see how those buckets of money, which the thing to remember when you see this budget book is that this represents cost. We do a separate revenue forecast, and then we use that number to balance against our budget book. And so when you see the budget book, it's budgeted for the whole program, but that doesn't necessarily mean that every single one of these buckets has committed or encumbered funds in it. But we have to make sure that our expenditure is balanced to our revenue projection. And you can see we're also tracking it by bond funding, T-SPLOS funding, and then the other little bits of funding that we get within the program. And you can see, again, like I mentioned earlier, 500 plus million bond and T-SPLOS combined, 38 million on the other. So this is predominantly a locally funded program. From this point, for the next, good heavens, 83 slides, it is nothing but project updates. The project data sheets that we put together and really drills down into specifics of the project, tells you who the project manager is, the phase it's in, the council districts that it touches, and gives you a budget summary. And so I don't think we have another 2 hours for me to go through all of those, but we wanted to make sure these were all included. The intent was that we would go overkill on the information, but not necessarily cover it today. So, Mr. Chair, I'll wrap things up at that point at a fairly high-level programmatic view, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Rowan, for the presentation. To members of the committee, if you do have questions, please hit your speaker button. I see Councilmember Dozier's first in line here. Before I turn to Councilmember Dozier, I do want to ask one question. I think one of the most deflating things for both council members and our constituents is when projects are identified, funding is identified, and then that it takes years and years for the project to get executed. And looking at slide 9, it has the district budget allocations and what's been unallocated. But to me, the most striking column there is the percent completed, which is 40% of the projects that have been identified and funded have been completed. And as we head toward a vote on the new T-SPLOS, which we need desperately, what is it that we can do, the DOT can do, that the city can do to get these projects executed, sooner rather than later? And I realize every project's different, and every project has its own obstacles that present themselves. And you have a very thorough report here, which takes us through each project. But for folks listening, and I think those of us sometimes on council, the thing that we want to see most is a shovel in the ground, and it takes sometimes excruciating long to get a shovel in the ground. Can you speak a little bit to how we get these projects completed?
Yeah, so it really comes down to the type of projects, Mr. Chair, and what we're looking at is to focus on more of the quick wins that don't require us to work outside of the right-of-way. So the minute we have to acquire right-of-way and or relocate utilities, the schedule becomes a very key driver, and then the budget starts increasing. We have some projects where you're adding years to the project, and construction may be on par with what we're using for the utilities. Even with sidewalks, oftentimes we don't have the right of way, or we have many jobs that will become it's essentially a wall job that happens to have sidewalks. And so I think we have to be smart about looking at where our near-term wins are, too often we're looking at some of these bigger complete streets, which are certainly appropriate and necessary, but it just, when you're looking at a pre-construction window of 2 to 3 years, procurement and construction being another 2 to 3 years, it's pretty typical for a significant transportation improvement to take 6 to 8 years, throw in federal funding, which we don't have a lot of those. Now you're talking 10 to 12 years. And so we're looking more at the things. So if you take the model you had mentioned, like the all-way stop, can we do things, for example, we've identified all of the city's missing ADA ramps. We'd like to hit those all in one shot. We'd like to take a similar approach as we did with the streetlights, with speed tables, rather than doing everything as a one-off. We do a lot of one-offs when we need to be really looking at more citywide programmatic efforts that then benefit all of the districts. And so, it really just becomes and then the last piece is quite often we get a lot of community pushback, which will create some delay, and that's a necessary element. We were joking with one community group that our goal is to argue during planning instead of arguing during construction. And so I think one of the things we have to get behind, and I was actually very, very tickled to see a resolution that's on the list for today. We want to work with the NPU system, work with neighborhoods, kind of building upon what Tuxedo Park did. So let's start working on very specific traffic plans. I'd like to work at the neighborhood level, then expand it out to the district so that we already have priorities identified. And so when it comes to delivering projects, we then can have real discussions about how we bundle these, how we start getting things out. And to your point, Mr. Chair, we talk about our 4 values. Safety is first and foremost. Service is right behind it, which is why we're always out in the community. Stewardship, are we spending the money in the right place? And then we just added a 4th. We technical people have to use alliteration to remember everything. But the 4th one's speed. And there's an element of speed to market that we can certainly focus on. But it comes down to the project type.
Thank you. Councilor Dozier, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Commissioner Rowan. I really appreciate you coming before us this morning. Just a couple short questions, and I have a more larger question. The project list that you shared at the beginning of the presentation, is that similar or the same one that's accessible on the DOT's website, or is that something I can request separately through your office? I would love to, if it's just a resolution on the version that was shared, it's tough to make out, some of these projects, and I would love to have something handy that I can share with constituents or share with folks who are curious about the status of a particular project, but we'd love to have something a little bit more accessible if that's something I can get from your team.
Yeah, this should be on the website, but we can certainly email you a copy of it. And you're right, this first 4-page report, I just find it to be very handy. It answers about 90% of the questions you may get.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And then I know you had talked about some of the work that's been going on with Bill Kennedy and the assessments that you're working through with GDOT. I'm happy to get with you or your team offline, but I would love to do something similar with McDaniel Street. We've seen a very similar rash of folks speeding at the on-ramp, and that creates the challenge where they crash into buildings that are on the opposite side of the ramp. So very similar situation. There's no belt line path that's adjacent to it. So, there's less of a spotlight with regards to some of the attention that has been given to it. But we'll love to get a site visit with you and your team, and potentially with the GDOT folks, and I can work with you offline on that as well. But just wanted to put that on your radar if it's something that you weren't, laser focused on, but we'd love to work with you all on getting a permanent solution there. I guess that was more of a comment. Go ahead. Sorry.
If I may, I think you're spot on. It's one of our challenges as we go forward that in many respects we have a limited access freeway that's tying directly into these urban villages and residential areas with not a whole lot of transition. And there are a lot of issues that are coming from that. I think one of the biggest issues is, everybody's trying to quote, beat the system by getting off the interstate and finding ways to cut through to then get back on the interstate. And so we need to continue to identify strategies that really slow things down and make things safer. But those transitions are very difficult when you're going from, let's face it, nobody's driving the speed limit on I-20, so you're probably going 80 miles an hour, exiting a ramp, and then all of a sudden you're having to slow down to 25, 30 miles an hour. That's a pretty abrupt transition. And so I would say we probably need to look at every off-ramp and analyze the crash data and what's going on there.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just been so alarming. I know you were talking about some of the challenges that have come up with regards to pedestrian and cyclist crashes, during the pandemic, and the increase that we've seen with regards to that. And I don't know if there's any data with regards to cars speeding up at these on-ramps and collisions with buildings, but it just seems, for whatever reason, to have happened a lot more in the last year and a half than we've seen before, which I imagine affects some of the calculus with regards to project priorities and things like that. But happy to have a further discussion and go into detail with you. And offline, I know this is more of a city-focused conversation, so no issues there. Just my bigger question is with regards to what we're seeing nationally with inflationary pressures. I know it's just costing more to do less, essentially. I know typically we factor in increases in labor and commodities costs with regards to increases in project costs. I'm curious if there's any concern from your team with regards to how inflation is impacting some of these project costs. That we voted on these lists for like T-SPLOS or Renew Atlanta, and we had a set cost in mind for executing some of these projects. But in the last year, I just would assume that inflation would have an impact on our ability to complete these projects at the cost in which they were originally proposed. And if that's something that's concerning your team, and just kind of curious if you can talk through it a bit. It's something that I've been curious about, just recognizing that even the District 4 discretionary budget, for instance, the $4 million that each of us received, each office received a few years ago, that $4 million isn't stretched as far as it did before. So it compels me to want to spend that money down much more quickly than maybe folks on my colleagues may have been willing to do beforehand, just because of those inflationary pressures. So I'm just curious if you have any thoughts on that.
No, you're exactly right. The areas that we've seen that are causing us some concern is we're hearing reports from the contracting community that on specialty items, things like mast arms for signals, anything that's having to be manufactured, quite often their cost estimate that they're receiving from either their supplier or their sub is only good for that day. And that makes it very difficult when you're going out to bid and get these projects done. One of the things that I shared with the previous committee, I don't think I've shared with this one, but 3 years ago, we sat down with the Georgia Highway Contractors Association and just asked how could we be a more mature owner. And they gave us 3 examples. They said, number one, your contracts can be a little challenging. Number 2, you don't pay your bills on time. And number 3, we hate your diversity program. And so we worked to clean up the contract. We're now paying about 80% of our bills net 30 days. Nothing goes beyond 60. And we told them on item 3 that was a deal breaker, and we weren't talking with them about it. In fact, we'd like to see more firms come into the game. And so I think there's a place in this that one of the ways you battle the inflationary pressure is more competition. So we've been actually very pleased over the past couple of months with the projects that have bid. The latest example was actually our LMIG 2020, where we saw about a 20% decrease in price from about 4 years ago. And so while those inflationary pressures are there, I think there's some cost certainty, some payment certainty that contractors getting a little more comfortable working with us and knowing that they're not going to have to essentially be financing these projects. And so we're taking the approach that let's clear the path and get these things done as quickly as we can. And it's paying dividends. And I've always believed that competition will also be a great neutralizer. And so most of what we're going out to bid now is public bid. And what we've told people is you learn how to do the JV, you learn how to bring your DVE firms. And we actually had one major firm tell us that they now take their diversity partners from Atlanta to other areas. And so I think it's something that's in the short term for us. I don't think we know the full story, but fortunately for us, we're far enough along in the program that we can adjust. I think it's something that as we look at project identification, it goes back to that: how do we do more smaller projects that then have a high ROI? Some of these big projects that are 6 to 8 years to deliver, it really could wreak havoc on them.
Thank you for that. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Dozier. Councilor Wan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner, in the interest of time, I'm going to try and keep my questions pretty quick and then perhaps ask for a deeper dive with you and your team at some point. I'm looking at page 2. I just want to make sure I understand the headings on the columns. And yes, I do want to echo Councilmember Dozier's request for a more legible version of this if possible. So with regard to, first of all, original budget, if a column item is blank, does that mean that project was initially not included in the list put before the voters?
Let me find one. So, for example, what had happened, let's look at Cascade. I will have to go back and look at that original budget, but if you look at the Cascade Phase 1, Cascade Phase 2, and the rebaselining, the only thing that happened was the design for Phase 2 plus some paving was funded. Let me drill into that one and get you a better answer on that, because there would have been some budget there, because that's an original project. South Boulevard Complete Street is an original project. So there are a couple of these that that's a good question. I'll get that answer for you.
Yeah, because those kind of jump out, and I just want to make sure I understand.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Okay. Next column under approved changes. First question is approved by whom? What was the process to make those adjustments?
So you have a couple ways that this can go. One is our internal project controls that as we update our estimates, we increase or decrease budgets. This can also, if the money's already been encumbered, would also include contract change orders.
Okay, so was there in those instances either council or public input or at least just deliberation before those changes were approved or decided on?
No, more than likely not. Again, Cascade is a good example. As we zeroed in on a realistic construction value, we had to move some contingency into that project, which is why you see a pretty big approved changes number. But we don't go back to the public and ask them to approve every administrative budget change we make, nor do we come to you all with that.
Okay. And the reason why I bring that up is kind of going back to Councilmember Faroki's comments about the heat that we feel on our side are not just the projects that the community think that they're going to get that haven't been started, but then those that have actually been modified or changed, or in some cases even removed. So I'm assuming that's all captured in this column. So if there was a budget, like a reforecast, or if projects were decided that in terms of less priority they were removed, that's where this column would capture that, correct?
Correct. We are continuously going through and updating projections for project cost. And one of the variables that can be a little bit unpredictable is right of way. We've done a nice job. For example, I'll just stay on Cascade again because it's fairly fresh. That was one we brought in at the right-of-way budget. We were a little concerned up front, but that was brought in at a decent number. We got some other benefits because we were able to negotiate a slightly lower rate for utility relocation. And so, yeah, the approved changes will tell the story as to what's happened, be it an estimated increase or a contract change order.
Okay, or or a project being taken off the list, correct?
No, absolutely not. No projects are taken off this list.
Okay, only projects on the district discretionary. Is that correct?
So the discretionary list, those are the council members' projects. Many of them have been completed. There are some that are identified but have a placeholder commitment. Our position is that's up to the council member to decide whether or not those go forward. So there's some changing of minds. I even with some changes in office holders, some changes in priorities, and so we've worked through where essentially if it shows where it's committed. We're sitting down with the council member and saying, well, do you want to continue with these, or do you have a different list that you're looking at? But as far as the main program goes, this represents the rebaseline project list, and right now the revenue forecast supports the completion of all of the projects, so nothing's going to be dropping off.
Okay. So just, I'm relieved to hear. So what you're saying is the main list, the project list is the same as it was presented to the voters, but if there have been any changes in project composition, it would be in the council discretionary section based on your dialogue with the then council member or the current council member, correct?
The change, well, we will have hundreds of budget adjustments to our projects, the main list, and happy to show you the process we use. We treat the discretionary projects as a separate list. We manage those to the 4.1 million, and even that has a lot of change. Add a project, take a project away, but it doesn't impact the main program.
Okay, but again, those changes in terms of additions and deletions from the actual project, not the dollars, but the project, that only happened at the council discretionary level.
To the discretionary projects added by the council member, yes.
Yeah, okay, perfect. In terms of the dollar amount of the total approved changes, I'm assuming that, I think you mentioned earlier, that basically we've shifted discretionary, that one line of 25 plus million, and then we've supplemented potentially with other funding. Is that correct? I mean, that's, at the end of the day, to make this all balanced to the totals that we've collected, that's how we've plugged and flat patched, correct?
No, the discretionary funding is a separate thing. So we don't, those don't cross over. The main T-SPLOS for new project list, what you see on the spreadsheet, is the program that was approved by the voters. If you were to jump back down to where to go, get back down here to slide 9. That 49 million in discretionary funding, those are completely separate from the renewed T-SPLOS project list. Those, just as I said, are truly discretionary funds, and we can. But we've got the project breakdown for all of those. So, for example, let's take your list of.
Commissioner, I may have said the wrong term. I'm talking about contingency. So the contingency amount of 26 million or 20, I can't read because of the resolution. I think it's 26 million that was in the original budget. The approved changes that is minus 25, that essentially you've taken that amount and then thrown it up into the various lines above for project budget increases per line item or decreases, as well as I'm assuming that the other piece that makes up the change is other funding. Is that correct?
Correct.
I'm not talking about discretionary anymore.
So where you see that very last one, the program contingency line, that was actually a change that I asked for because that's not a real contingency. That's essentially a project named program contingency with an estimated cost. So it's kind of a hedge against where we think the cost is going to be. This past truing up of the program and the budget cycle, we put the contingencies on the projects as opposed to just having a big bucket, because really we went through the fine-tooth comb and tried to figure out where we needed more, where our cost estimates needed adjustment, and essentially we blanked that whole category out.
Yep. Okay. How often do you do kind of that rebalancing, reforecasting? Back to Councilmember Dozier's question about construction prices are flying all over the place right now. But how often do y'all relook at and sharpen your pencils on these numbers?
So we take a really close look at it on a quarterly basis, and then the budget book gets some extra attention on an annual basis.
Okay. All right. And then I think you said that while we stopped collecting on the funds in April 2022, we still have the ability to continue working and finishing these projects. Is there a deadline on when the projects have to be finished for these first issuances?
On the T-SPLOS, no. On the bond funding, there were some initial issues, but I would have to defer to finance on that. So you can, if you go to the anticipated construction finish, you can see we have projects that are 2025, 2023, that push a little ways out there. But on the T-SPLOS, it's essentially money in the bank to then be spent against the projects.
Yeah, I realize we collected the money, but I'm just more concerned, is there a deadline that we have to, wrap up, finish constructing the very last project, or else?
No, there's not.
Okay. Two last questions. On page 6, the 61.0% complete, does it line up with the circle graph? Because the dark blue doesn't look like 61% to me.
Yeah, so the thing to keep in mind there is we're measuring progress by phase. And so it's not saying that 61% of the projects have been built. What we're saying is the 61% of the program funding has been spent. So the 61 is really the paid versus the budget.
Okay.
So we're giving ourselves credit for planning being done, for design being done, not necessarily just waiting until we're having ribbon cuttings to say it's finished.
Gotcha. Okay, so long as the funds have been committed, then you qualify that into 61%.
Correct.
Okay. And then my last question is going back to, you said that the project deadlines extend out to 2025. So we're about to go out to the public to ask for another big tranche or two big tranches of money that are now going to overlap on top of the construction we have to finish on these first issuances. So we're almost doubling up our level of work. Do we really have the capacity to do that?
Oh, we certainly
at least
do.
For the next 3.5 years.
We certainly do. In fact, this is pretty common with local government T-SPLOS programs. Early in my career, I was assigned to another jurisdiction. I was still working on their 85 program in 2002, and so there's generally quite a bit of overlap. The big thing with these is once they get into construction, they start taking a life of their own, and actually it gets a little simpler at that point. So a lot of the design, the permitting, right-of-way utilities is where a lot of the challenge comes. So that you're seeing this current program moving into construction, and we are, we're basically building up the internal resources as well as the external resources to handle easily a doubling of the quantity.
Okay. All right. And okay, that answers my question. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Commissioner.
Mr. Chair, this is Waite. I have a quick question.
Ms. Waite, I'd ask you to hit your speaker button. If you're not online, you're up after Councilmember Overstreet.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Overstreet, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And thank you very much, Commissioner Rowland, for your presentation today. I'm so glad we didn't do all 90 pages. but I'm sure each page had even more answers to our questions. But I was going to jump in and share a little bit of history because I remember clearly when we were going through the prioritization and the rebaselining of the Cascade Complete Streets project. And I was going to let Councilmember Juan know that we actually didn't take projects off. It was a rebaselining, meaning trying to make sure the public knew, and we did go before the public with all of the bad news as to which ones were actually going to be procured and which ones were going to actually be just designed and which ones were going to start construction soon. So I too had an issue, and I remember this clearly. I had an issue because I felt like there's no way we could just pull projects off of the list that we were all told that we will be receiving. So, and especially if we don't take it to the community. So we did all of that, and I didn't see any projects being pulled off of the list. And I wanted to say that. I would say that people were not happy when phase 2 was not going to be in the construction of this particular T-Splice, but teed up to be at the top of construction for the next T-Splice once phase 1 was completed. So I remember all of that clearly, and I know that you had several other questions, so I just wanted to chime in to let you know that we did go to the public about the rebaselining. Nothing was actually taken off of the list, but the intentions were stated clearly within the community, and those meetings were not easy. They weren't easy at all. And all of the
thank you, Councilmember.
Yeah. Okay. And that's really what I was chiming in to say, because we lived it real time and it was painful. So thank you. But I think he did touch on it. That's it, Chair Faroki. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that context and insight, Councilmember Overstreet. Councilmember Waits, the floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. I have a quick question. It appears that some of the projects have had some decrease in funding, and I'll give you an example. The MLK Bridge design was originally budgeted for about $4 million, and I noticed now that it's decreased to $1.3 million. Is there a reason or logic in terms of why that decrease would have occurred?
Yeah, so you'll see a number of projects ended up being design-only projects, and so we would have to look at the specific budgets itself. But there have been issues with the MLK project. I would jump down to the project sheet, but yeah, what was I trying to say? We also have, in parallel to that, the Spring Street project, which was the Spring Street Bridge Phase 2. And so a lot of the scope from MLK actually got rolled into the active project on Spring Street Bridge. So we could certainly kind of give a breakdown of those two, but the two projects are essentially adjacent to each other.
Okay, and what were you saying that the reason for the decrease in funding? You're saying that there's some internal issues or challenges?
No, it was so a lot of the work from MLK we actually picked up as part of the Spring Street job, and so we're also going to be looking for external funding for MLK. We're going to try to move forward with federalizing a number of our bridge projects, but we moved a lot of that forward as part of Spring Street.
Okay, so essentially you are saying that the $4 million was still allocated, but it was just used differently in terms of the projects being adjacent.
Correct. We the thing to keep in mind was with this thing being design only, there's obviously that's an adjustment to the design budget. So we would have to drill deeper into those details. $4 million seems like a pretty healthy design budget. It seems a little high. So what the 2.7 represents is very likely just an adjustment to that design budget.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Waits. I don't see anyone else in the queue. Before we thank the Commissioner for his report and close it out, are there any questions from the committee remaining? And barring none, thank you, Commissioner Rowan, for your time. We'll obviously see you before your next formal report.
Antonio had a question.
I'm sorry, Councilor Lewis, please go ahead.
More of a comment. Thank you, Commissioner Rowland, for being so detailed and for giving us all the information that you've given us. Thank you. I look forward to your next report. I look forward to seeing some of the projects get concluded as well. Thank you again and also for coming over to Cleveland Avenue at 3 a.m. in the morning, laying salt with me yourself. Thank you again.
Yes, sir. My pleasure. When we get some lights installed, we'll do it again.
And thank you for answering transportation DOT questions on my Instagram yourself. Thank you for being active in doing that yourself. You solved the issue yourself.
My pleasure, sir.
All right, thank you, Commissioner, for your time today and for your report.
Thank you, sir.
Our next item is item number I, ordinances for first reading. I'll turn to Mr. Johnson to read them in.
Item number 1, 2020-1119, an ordinance by Transportation Committee to create the Airport CRRSA Act grant under project of the city's Oracle financial system to amend the fiscal year 2022 budget by adding to anticipations and appropriations the proceeds of the Federal Aviation Administration Grant Agreement 3-13-8-125-2021 in the amount of $11,459,547.00 for the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act grant and for other purposes. Item number 2, 2020-1120, an ordinance by Transportation Committee to create the Airport CRRSA Act grant under project in the city's Oracle financial system to amend the fiscal year 2022 budget by adding to anticipations and appropriations the proceeds of the Federal Aviation Administration Grant Agreement 3-13-8-126-2021 in the amount of $75,842,496.00 for the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act grant and for the purposes. Item number 3, 2020-1121, an ordinance by Transportation Committee to amend the FY 2022 Renewal and Extension Fund Aviation Encumbrance Program 2019B AMT GARBs and 2019C PFC non-AMT Bond Fund budget by transferring to and from appropriations a total amount of $77,104,602.00 for reimbursement of the Aviation Encumbrance Program and for other purposes. Item number 4, 2020-1122, an ordinance by the Transportation Committee to amend the FY 2022 Airport Renewal and Extension Fund, Airport Passenger Facility Charge Fund, Airport Customer Facility Charge Fund, 2019A non-AMT GARBs, 2019B AMT GARBs, 2019C PFC non-AMT Bond Fund, and 2019D PFC AMT Bond Fund budgets by transferring to and from appropriations a total amount of $28,137,676.00 for reimbursement of the Airport Renewal and Extension Fund and for the purposes. Item number 5, 2020-1123, an ordinance by Transportation Committee to amend the FY 2022 Airport Renewal and Extension Fund budget by adding to anticipation and appropriations grant funds in the amount of $355,750.48 from the Atlanta Regional Commission for the purpose of increasing the use of primary commute alternatives to employers in designated areas of the airport area and for other purposes. And lastly, item number 6, 2020-1124, an ordinance by Transportation Committee to authorize the mayor or his designee in accordance with Section 2-1163, subsection C of the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances to ratify services rendered in connection with the contract FC 10311, architectural and engineering services for the Cycle Atlanta 1.0 improvement project with WSP USA Inc. on behalf of the Atlanta Department of Transportation, and to authorize the mayor or his designee to exercise renewal option number 2 for a term of 1 year, retroactively effective September 1st, 2021 through August 31st, 2022, with no additional funding required and for other purposes.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. We'll now move to item J, ordinances for second reading. We have a good number today, but we'll start with item number 7. I'll turn it back over to you.
Item number 7, 2020-1086, an ordinance by Transportation Committee authorizing the mayor or designee to execute amendment number 2 to the project management agreement with Midtown Business Association, Inc., doing business as Midtown Alliance, the Juniper Street Bicycle Facility, Midtown Atlanta Regional Activity Center Pedestrian Mobility and Safety Improvements, and US 19 Spring Street Pedestrian Mobility and Safety Improvements Project to extend the term of the agreement for a period of not to exceed 36 months, retroactively effective December 31st, 2021, and for other purposes.
Thank you. I believe I will make a motion to approve. And while I wait for a second, I believe we have Ms. Fulton from ATL-DOT to speak to this item.
1 second.
Good morning, Jessica Fulton, Deputy Commissioner, ATL-DOT. The purpose of this legislation will allow us to extend our project management agreement with Midtown Alliance for a period no longer than 36 months. This will allow us to complete the procurement and construction of 3 projects covered under this agreement. These projects will deliver much-needed pedestrian, bicycle, traffic signal, and other safety improvements to the Midtown area, including on Juniper Street and Spring Street. We are in support of this legislation.
Thank you, Ms. Fulton. We have a motion by Faruqi, second by Juan. Please open the vote.
1 moment. The vote is open.
Wait is aye.
Will everyone please vote? The vote is closed. 7 yeas, 0 nays. This item is favorable. Item number 8, 2020-1087, an ordinance by Transportation Committee authorizing the mayor or designee on behalf of the Atlanta Department of Transportation to accept funding from the Georgia Department of Transportation for the Peachtree Road Corridor Project, Phase 3, to amend the fiscal year 2021 budget by adding to anticipations and appropriations an amount not to exceed $2,669,842.40 on behalf of the Atlanta Department of Transportation to authorize the mayor or her designee to enter into agreements with the Georgia Department of Transportation for implementation of grant acceptance and participation and for other purposes.
Thank you, Ms. Fulton. Would you like to speak to this paper?
Good morning. This paper will allow us to accept funds for construction of this project from the Georgia Department of Transportation. These funds were awarded to the Buckhead Community Improvement District, and we are serving as facilitators to get this funding for the Peachtree Road Phase 3 project. We're in support of this legislation.
Juan, motion to approve.
Yeah, I will second that. Motion by Juan, second by Faruqi. Please open the vote.
The vote is open.
Wait is aye.
The vote is closed. 7 yeas, 0 nays. This item is favorable. Mr. Chair, can we take items number 9 and 10 together as a block if there's no objection from the committee?
No objection from me, and barring no objection from the body, please do.
Yes, these items will be held for a public hearing. Item number 9, 2020-1088, an ordinance by Transportation Committee authorizing the mayor or designee on behalf of the City of Atlanta to abandon portions of a public street known as Auburn Avenue, consisting of approximately 0.37 acres lying and being in land lot 189 of the 17th District of Fulton County, Georgia, being more specifically described in the attached Exhibit A to West Midtown Acquisition Company LLC, authorizing the mayor or designee to execute a quitclaim deed for such abandoned right-of-way and for other purposes. Item number 10, 2020-1089, an ordinance by a Transportation Committee authorizing the mayor or his designee on behalf of the City of Atlanta to abandon portions of a public street known as Reynolds Street, consisting of approximately 0.25 acres, lying and being in land lot 189 of the 17th District of Fulton County, Georgia, being more specifically described in the attached Exhibit A to West Midtown Acquisition Company LLC, authorizing the mayor or his designee to execute a quitclaim deed for such abandoned right-of-way and for other purposes.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I believe Ms. Alexander may be with us to speak to these papers, and I think we're going to move to hold them for public hearing in the future. Is Ms. Alexander, are you with us?
I am on the call today, and we have asked for these to be held for public hearings, but these are just basic abandonment papers to assist in the redevelopment in that area. We have reviewed all of the documents and have notified all of the abutting property owners and are prepared to move forward with the abandonment process.
Terrific, but today we'll need to hold it for the public hearings to take place, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I will move to hold items 9 and 10. Can I get a second?
1 second.
Thank you, Mr. Juan. Motion by Faroki, second by Juan. Please open the vote, Mr. Johnson.
One moment. The vote is open.
Wait, it's on.
Will everyone please vote? Councilmember Lewis, how do you vote? The vote is closed. 7 yeas, 0 nays. These items were held.
Item 11.
Item 11, 2020-1096. An ordinance by Councilmember Byron Amos waiving the sidewalk requirements of Section 15-09.003 of the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances for subdivision application SD 2010-1193 Warfield Street, to provide that in lieu of constructing the required sidewalk at the subdivision site, the developer of the subdivision shall construct approximately 438 linear feet of sidewalk along portions of Wright Street and Niles Street and for other purposes.
So, Ms. Alexander, would you like to speak to this paper?
Yes, we have reviewed the application and we are okay with moving forward. We have also sent the quote for the relocation of the sidewalk to planning. So we are fine with moving forward with the legislation.
Terrific. Thank you. I will move to approve. Can I get a second? Thank you, Ms. Waits.
Wait.
Thank you, Ms. Waits. Motion by Faroki, second by Waits. Please open the vote.
One moment. The vote is open. Will everyone please vote? Councilmember Overstreet, how do you vote?
Sorry. Oh, there you go.
7 yeas, 0 nays. This item is favorable. Item number 12, 2020-1100. An ordinance by Councilmember Andrea L. Boone authorizing the mayor or his designee to install traffic calming devices on Haldane Drive Southwest between Harlan Road Southwest and Fielding Lane Southwest to waive certain provisions of Section 138-84D of the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances and for other purposes.
Christina Alexander, Department of Transportation. We have reviewed this request and are okay with moving it forward with the understanding that this location will be placed on a list for the FY23 funding, because FY22 funding for traffic calming devices has already been expended for this fiscal year.
Ms. Alexander, before we make a motion and vote on this, this comes up every year where council members request speed tables in their districts on various streets, and the funding disappears really quickly. How much is set aside every year for speed table funding?
So it depends on this. For this fiscal year, we have $500,000 that was set aside. Last fiscal year, I want to say it was the same amount, but we had a very difficult time procuring the contract, so we were unable to get any installed last fiscal year.
And how much?
Recently used the concept.
Okay. And how much do the speed table typically cost?
Between $3,000 and $6,000 each. And a typical street will have between 3 and 6 speed tables, depending, of course, on the length of the street. But typically, we install between 3 and 6 per location.
And this is conducted through a third-party contractor, or we do any of this in-house?
So it is conducted through a third-party contractor. We are currently experimenting with starting to install some with in-house crews also.
Okay. Great. I will move to approve. Can I get a second?
One second, and I have a question.
Sorry. Let's go with Mr. Wan, Ms. Overstreet, and then Mr. Lewis. Mr. Wan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Alexander, the allocation of $500,000, was that a specific budget allocation or amendment during the budget process, or does that come out of your departmental budget?
Yes. Recently, it has been a budget allocation that is given to us specifically for traffic calming devices in the budget.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Overstreet.
Yes, this is a popular item at this time. Everyone's asking for them street by street. So you stated that we have $500,000 that we did not use for fiscal year 2022. So does that $500,000 carry over to fiscal year 2023? And can we add to that and maybe be at $1 million so that we can get these speed tables installed?
So I want to say, okay, so the money for fiscal year 21 was not used. We're in fiscal year 22 now. So the money for fiscal 21 and the money for fiscal 22, I think, are being installed in fiscal 22. I need to check with the traffic calming section to make sure that's correct. But I think we were able to procure a contract for both for $1 million for this fiscal year. But of course, the list for FY21 and the list for FY22, the $500,000 each fiscal year is fully expended.
Okay. All right. Well, so the best way for us to actually get our speed humps in queue is to legislate it.
Well, normally we're pretty astute in conducting the studies and getting everything done. We really only ask you to legislate when we have issues with getting the petitions executed because of lack of signatures or that type thing.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councilmember Overstreet. Councilmember Lewis, did you have a question?
Yes, my question was around the contracting out to third party of doing the speed maintaining devices. How can we do it in-house? And do we have capability to do all of them in-house, to keep all this money in-house?
So we do not have the capacity as of yet to install speed humps solely in-house and complete them in a timely manner and expend the funds every fiscal year. As you know, we focus on really right-of-way maintenance. So our crews are mostly, sidewalk, potholes, unpaved street bridges, and those kind of take precedence over the traffic calming device installation. But as I stated before, we have recently received training, and we have installed a prototype, for lack of a better term, of a traffic calming device. So that is definitely a conversation that our commissioner will be having with the administration for the upcoming budget to talk about resources required so that we may be able to start to install some of these in-house without contracting wholesalely to outside vendors.
And this is a follow-up question. Councilmember Overstreet mentioned how popular these devices were in our community. They were saying in my community. I'm assuming they probably are all around Atlanta. I would be for us increasing capacity, because you said it's a capacity issue. I would be for us increasing the capacity so that we can do that. If we were to increase capacity and hire folks ourselves, is this something that the city of Atlanta could take on, since this is such a popular topic?
Yes, if we were properly resourced, we could take on this function, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Lewis, and thank you, Ms. Alexander, for the color and context. I know this is, as Councilmember Overstreet and Lewis indicated, these are items that are in high demand as folks want their neighborhoods to be safer. And so I think we're all pulling in the same direction on this one, and we'll coordinate with Councilor Juan and FTC to see what's possible here. There is a motion on the floor by myself and a second from Councilmember Juan on item number 12. Can you please open the vote?
The vote is open.
Wait is aye.
Will everyone please vote? Votes closed. 7 yeas, 0 nays. Is item favorable? Mr. Chair, if there's no objection from the committee, can we take items number 13 and 15 together as a block?
Yes, please do.
Item number 13, 22-01108, an ordinance by Councilmember Amir R. Faroki authorizing the mayor or his designee to install a four-way stop at the intersection of North Highland Avenue Northeast and Inman Village Parkway Northeast. To authorize the Atlanta Department of Transportation to install stop signs at the intersection and for the purposes. Item number 15, 22-01115, an ordinance by Councilmember Dustin Hillis authorizing the mayor or his designee to make the intersections of Holmes Street Northwest and Antone Street Northwest and Bowen Place Northwest and Berkeley Avenue Northwest and Bowen Place Northwest in the Berkeley Park neighborhood, always stop control intersections, to authorize the Atlanta Department of Transportation to install stop signs at the intersections and for other purposes.
Cotina Alexander, Atlanta Department of Transportation. The first location is North Highland and Inman Village Parkway. Inman Village Parkway is a private road that does provide access to commercial and residential property, as well as the Beltline is located a short distance north of this intersection. We ask that we move forward with this legislation because we feel by installing this always stop, it will provide pedestrian safety for those accessing the Beltline at this location. The second location in Councilmember Hillis' district are all local residential streets, and the installation of the always stops will help with sight distance visibility issues that we have at those locations. So we ask that we move forward with approving this legislation also.
Thank you, Ms. Alexander. I'll move to approve. I see Councilmember Juan in the speaker's queue. Mr. Juan, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I will second this. Ms. Alexander, similarly to the speed tables, what is the queue process and status look like for if there's backlog and for the installation of such requests?
So we don't currently have a backlog of always stop installation requests. If they are conducted in-house, we normally get those. It takes us about 90 days to complete the study and then get the signs fabricated and installed. If it's done via legislation, we can normally get those signs installed about 30 days after the legislation is passed. So currently we don't have a backlog of always stop installations, and we do, of course, fabricate and install all of those control devices ourselves.
Great. So if we have a particular location we want to inquire about, should we reach out to you, Ms. Alexander?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Juan. Motion by Faroki, second by Juan. Please open the vote on these two items.
The vote is open. Will everyone please vote?
Wait is aye.
please vote. Councilmember Westmoreland, how do you vote?
Aye.
The vote is closed. 7 yeas, 0 nays, favorable. Item number 14, 22-0-1110. An ordinance by Councilmember Alex Juan to allow a sidewalk waiver issued by the Director of the Office of Zoning and Development per Section 16-06.011, subsection 6 of the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances for application DB 202104302, 1184 Spring Valley Lane Northeast, to provide that in lieu of constructing the required sidewalks at the named waiver site, Cumberland Road Northeast and Wessington Road Northeast, the application DB 202104302 shall pay blank into the District 6 sidewalk fund and for other purposes.
Terrific. Ms. Alexander, would you like to speak to this before maybe Councilor Juan may want to speak to it as well, but we'll start with you, Ms. Alexander.
Well, we have reviewed the location, and we have provided the estimate, but it was my understanding that we were going to hold this for one cycle.
Okay. I was told we've been approved on condition. Mr. Johnson or Mr. Juan, either of you want to weigh in here?
This is Councilmember Juan. Yeah, that was my understanding too, that we wanted to go ahead and move this forward, approve it on condition of having the amounts and a substitute on Monday that would include that total.
Okay, well, we're fine with that because we do have those amounts.
Great, thank you. So I'll make the motion to approve on condition, with that condition being the dollar amount filled in on Monday's meeting.
I will second. Mr. Johnson, please open the vote.
One moment. The vote is open.
Wait, is aye?
Will everyone please vote? Seven yeas, 0 nays. This item is favorable on condition. Well, now, make up the Section K resolution 22R. Item number 16, 22R3141. A resolution by Council Members Dustin Hillis and Byron Amos authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into an agreement with Norfolk Southern Railway Company on behalf of the City of Atlanta Department of Transportation to access the railway right-of-way for infrastructure improvements related to the Marietta Boulevard segment of the Atlanta Beltline West Side Trail, and to authorize the Chief Financial Officer to pay Norfolk Southern Railway Company for certain construction activities in an amount not to exceed $58,920.0, for such payment to be reimbursed to the city by the PATH Foundation and for other purposes.
Great. Commissioner Rowan, are you still with us? I understand you will speak to this item.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. This is a fairly standard right-of-way issue for us. We are working with Norfolk Southern. They're on Marietta Boulevard and clearly crossing their tracks. We need extra room to do this work, and so we recommend approval on this one to keep this project moving.
Great. Motion to approve. Can I get a second?
Mr. Chair, we need a motion to amend for Exhibit A. Exhibit A is the agreement.
I will remove my motion to approve and make a motion to amend to add Exhibit A. Can I get a second to that?
Second by Wade.
Thank you, Ms. Wade. Motion by Froke, second by Wade. Please open the vote on the motion to amend.
The vote is open.
Wade is aye.
Will everyone please vote? Seven yeas, 0 nays. This item has been amended.
Great. I will now move to approve the item that has been amended. Can I get a second?
Second by Wade.
Thank you, Ms. Wade. Please open the vote, Mr. Johnson.
The vote is open. Will everyone please vote? 7 yeas, 0 nays. This item is favorable as amended. Item number 17, 22R3142, a resolution by Councilwoman Norwood requesting the Commissioner of the Atlanta Department of Transportation to develop a traffic plan for District 8 to determine the sources of traffic and propose strategies to address them and for other purposes.
Great. Thank you. I believe Commissioner Rowan is here to speak on it, as well as Councilmember Norwood. Why don't we start with Councilmember Norwood before we turn to Commissioner Rowan. Councilor Norwood, are you with us?
Yes, I am. And I'll let the Commissioner speak to it, since he is the one who's been asked to prepare this, and then I can answer any questions that y'all have.
Terrific. Commissioner?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. Josh Rowan, Commissioner, Atlanta Department of Transportation. We really like the thought process behind this legislation. I think too often we find ourselves in a reactive mode, and much of the city is suffering the same thing. We're a growing region, we're a growing city, and what should be calm, safe residential streets have been prioritized for cut-through commuting traffic. And twice a day we see our neighborhoods really just suffocate due to the traffic. And so this effort has spun off of some work that the Tuxedo Park neighborhood did, where they hired a consultant to do their own traffic plan. I will admit, I think it's one of the best that I've seen, and I've been carrying copies of it around with me. And knowing that these issues are bigger than one neighborhood, the idea that I had was, how do we start doing this at a council district level? We had talked in the past about having now that we have a city scorecard, can we drill a little deeper into the council districts? Because obviously one size doesn't fit all. But the one item that does fit all is that we have really speeding issues and safety issues. And so we're going to be advocating through the budget cycle to get this funded. And we'd like to do more of these, where ideally in the future we're talking about prioritized projects and really working as a city to start calming the traffic, improving the safety of our streets. And again, as you heard from the callers today, there's not a quadrant of the city that's not experiencing these safety issues. So we recommend this for approval and look forward to working with Councilmember Norwood.
Terrific. I will move to approve. Can I get a second? And if there's any questions for Councilmember Norwood, she is with us.
Second by Waits.
Thank you, Ms. Waits. Barring no questions, please open the vote.
The vote is open. Will everyone please vote? The vote is closed. 7 yeas, 0 nays. The item is favorable. Item number 1822R3181, a resolution by Transportation Committee authorizing the mayor or his designee to execute amendment number 1 to agreement EAC 1210328, Alston Drive Culvert Repair with Suncoast Restoration and Waterproofing LLC on behalf of the Department of Transportation to add funding for continued culvert repair services in the amount not to exceed $18,000.00. All contracted work to be charged to and paid from various funding department, organization, account numbers listed herein and for other purposes.
Ms. Alexander, are you with us?
Yes, Cortina Alexander, the Atlanta Department of Transportation. We have been repairing the Alston Drive culvert for some time. Back a few months ago, we asked the contractor to demobilize because of a golf tournament, so we had to pay for those demobilization and remobilization fees, as well as when they started to really get into repair the undermining of the culvert, they found some additional repairs that was needed. So this $18,000 pays for that demobilization fee as well as the additional repairs.
Excellent. I will move to approve. Can I get a second?
Second by Waits.
Thank you, Ms. Waits. Mr. Johnson, please open the vote.
The vote is open. Will everyone please vote? The vote is closed. 7 yeas, 0 nays. This item is favorable. Item number 1922R3182, a resolution by Transportation Committee authorizing the mayor or designee to execute an agreement for IFBC 10257, annual contract for maintenance and repair of sidewalks, curbs, driveway aprons, ramps, and associated infrastructure with Knight and Associates, Inc., on behalf of the Atlanta Department of Transportation for a term of 2 years with 3 one-year renewal options in an amount not to exceed $2 million and 0 cents. All contracted work will be charged to and paid from the fund, department, organization, and account number listed herein, and for other purposes.
Ms. Alexander?
This is actually under our capital division unit, but this is our annual sidewalk repair contract that we are awarding to Knight and Associates for the repair of sidewalks throughout the city of Atlanta.
Good. I'll move to approve. Can I get a second?
Second by Waite.
Thank you, Ms. Waite. Mr. Johnson, please open the vote.
The vote is open. Will everyone please vote? Will everyone please vote? Councilmember Lewis, how do you vote? 7 yeas, 0 nays. This item is favorable. Item number 22R3183, a resolution by Transportation Committee authorizing the mayor designee to exercise renewal option number 1 for FC 9034 Orange Street Parking Management Program with SP Plus all-in-one joint venture on behalf of the Department of Transportation for a term of 1 year effective March 14th, 2022 through March 13th, 2023, and for other purposes.
Ms. Alexander?
This is actually Doug Nagy is supposed to speak to this one, but it is the renewal for our on-street parking management program.
Great. I believe Mr. Nagy's on the line. If you'd like to chime in, Mr. Nagy.
Perfect. Thank you, Councilman. This is Deputy Commissioner Doug Nagy under Commissioner Rowan and ATL DOT. This is a 1 year extension of our 5-year on-street parking contract. So we have ATL Plus or SP Plus as our vendor that hands out the parking tickets if someone's illegally parking or hasn't paid for their parking. This would be a 1 year extension of this program. The main reason behind it is that demand for on-street parking is very volatile as a result of the pandemic. So now would not be an optimal time to go rebid a contract in this area. Recommend passage.
Thank you. Mr. Nagy, do you know how many automatic or how many 1 year renewals are permitted under the contract?
We have 2 permitted renewals. This is the first of 2.
And each renewal is permitted for up to 1 year?
Correct.
Okay. I will move to approve. Can I get a second? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Wan, I didn't see you in the speaker queue. Please go ahead.
That's okay. I'd like to make a substitute motion. Actually, that's not the right term. But I'd I'd like to see the financials performance on the last 5 years. This is on a revenue sharing basis, and I'd like to know what the performances look like over the first portion of their contract. So I'm going to make another motion to approve on condition of receiving that information before Monday's meeting.
I'll second that. Is that something you can provide before the council meeting on Monday, Mr. Nagy?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, great. So motion by Juan, second by Faroki. Conditional approval on the table. Please open the vote.
The vote is open.
Wait, is aye.
Will everyone please vote? Seven yeas, 0 nays. This item is favorable on condition. Item number 22R3184, a resolution by Transportation Committee authorizing the mayor designee to execute agreement for RFP S 1220020 Concessions audit services with Platinum Financial Services for asset management, consulting, and professional services at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport for an initial term of 3 years with 2 one-year renewal options in the amount not to exceed $657,000. For the initial term, all services will be charged to and paid from the account numbers described herein and for other purposes.
Thank you. Is General Manager Bayadari with us? Mr. Bayadari, are you with us?
Mr. Chairman, this is Michael Smith, Deputy General Manager, sitting in for Mr. Bayadari. This paper will allow us to conduct audits of our concessions program. It is a 3-year agreement with 2 one-year options. We typically do 60 audits per year to validate the sales, the internal controls, and pricing of these concessions companies. We had 2 proponents for this one. It was issued under the city's EBO, Small Business Shelter Market Program, and this thus is a small business operator, and we asked for approval.
Thank you. I will move to approve.
Antonio Lewis has comment.
Mr. Lewis, motion by Faruqi, second by Juan. Before we open the vote, Mr. Lewis, the floor is yours.
I just want to say, Assistant General Manager Mike Smith, I appreciate the work you're doing at the airport, and I fully support this. Thank you for the 60 audits that y'all do a year. Y'all are a model of consistency. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Lewis.
Mr. Johnson, please open the vote.
One moment. The vote is open.
Wait, is I.
7 yeas, 0 nays. This item is favorable. That takes us to item number 22 of Paper 7 Committee. Item number 22, 22R3125, a resolution by Transportation Committee authorizing the mayor of designee to execute an agreement for RFPC 1220-100 Concourse Z widening at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport with Holder Moody Bryson Sovereign, a joint venture construction management at risk contract and the initial amount not to exceed $5 million. All services will be charged to and paid from the account numbers listed herein and for other purposes. And this item needs to be amended to add the actual report.
Perfect. I will move to amend to add the IPRA report. Can I get a second?
1 second.
Thank you, Mr. Juan. Please open the vote.
The vote is open.
Wait, is I.
Will everyone please vote? 7 yeas, 0 nays. This item is amended.
Thank you. Before we move to vote on this item, Mr. Baydar, is there anything you'd like to share with us contextually? I know we presented on this at the last committee meeting, but if you're here and you want to speak to it, please do.
Again, Mr. Chairman, this is Michael Smith. No problem. Not much to add. As you know, Concourse D is one of our smaller concourses. Concourses A, B, and C are 90 feet in width. Concourse D is only 60 feet in width. Over time, of course, we've moved to larger aircraft, and meaning there are more passengers that are in the hold room. So the airport is looking at, and airlines, widening the concourse. This contract will allow us to have the construction manager on board to assist with the designer, who will look at validating the constructability of the project, the phasing of the project, and come up with our final cost estimates for building out this project.
Okay. Thank you. I will move to approve. Can I get a second?
Second, Juan.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson, please open the vote.
One moment. The vote is open.
Wait, is that?
Will everyone please vote? 7 yeas, 0 nays. This item table was amended. And Mr. Chair, that concludes our legislative items for today.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. That brings us to the end of our meeting today. I want to thank the committee for a robust and efficient meeting. Those don't always go hand in hand, but we managed to do it. I will pause to see if there's any comments or closing remarks from members of the committee before we adjourn.
Mr. Chair, this is Waits.
Yes, Ms. Waits, please go ahead.
Is there anyone on the line that can provide some type of update surrounding Bill Kennedy Way? I've actually seen one of those vehicles that have hit that barrier before. It's pretty destructive, and so I'm just curious to see if there's a current update available.
Mr. Rowan, I know you were on site recently with the mayor and Councilmember Bakhtiari. Do you want to weigh in?
Yes, sir. I can actually provide some new information. The Bill Kennedy Way issues, as we mentioned earlier, it's a challenge in that you have a collector distributor supporting the interstate that is essentially a straight exit to Bill Kennedy Way. So if you envision a high-speed limited access highway transitioning immediately to an urban street, it's creating some challenges. And so we're looking really at three buckets of issues. The first being that just the speed and the awareness of the intersection on the ramp. And so I actually met with the state traffic engineer and chief engineer yesterday to just talk about some things that the department, GDOT, could do to provide better advance warning. Those of us who've been in town for a while remember the bus that drove through the Northside Drive overpass. So similar type issues there. What sort of flashing beacon signs, pavement markings could be done to draw the driver's attention more to the fact that there's a signalized intersection coming up. As you turn southbound onto Bill Kennedy Way, there are issues with really the left-hand turning movements at Faith Avenue. I didn't realize this until yesterday, but that used to be an all-way stop until there was some pretty significant outcry for a signal. The signal actually is causing some issues because that whole intersection vapor locks. So we're going to have to look at that intersection. And then much of the traffic on Bill Kennedy Way is actually just trying to beat I-20 and is cutting through to Glenwood. And so we're going to look at just simple measures. For example, should we be installing speed tables on Bill Kennedy Way through that urban section? So even if people cut through, it won't be the most efficient use of their time, and maybe they'll just stick to I-20. So GDOT said they will give the district traffic office this week, and I'm sure we'll be talking more next week about what they feel is appropriate that they can install on that ramp. And we'll continue to look, I think, primarily at that intersection to see how we can clean up the operation in there. It's a tight 400-foot stretch with a lot going on that at the end of the day is very, very harsh to the pedestrians in that area. And we certainly don't want to continue to have that challenge.
Thank you, Commissioner. Ms. Waits, anything else?
No, sir.
Great. Well, barring no other closing remarks from the body, I want to thank everyone for today's meeting, and I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you all.